energy democracy, and I will look up to Dr. Palit to explain to us if DRE can be the potential market instrument for India to meet its NDC and electrification goals, and if we can have any complementary policy suggestions to advance DRE initiatives too.
Uh, Thank you, Megha. So let me first congratulate all the stakeholders that we have achieved 100 gigawatt of renewable energy power in India. And many may not be knowing that it started with the DRE installation of a DRE system in 1981 in Masudpur village, which is now called Basant Kunj. Probably many in the ministry may not also be knowing that. This one. So it's about 40 years of the DRE system, though we have achieved 100 gigawatt primarily because of the centralized renewable energy. But then it started with the TERI, and in fact, the electrification in India started in 1897 with the TERI solutions in the form of a micro hydropower project in Darjeeling. This one. So just wanted to build the context, and this one now. Let's see what is happening now in India, as rightly pointed out by my previous speaker, Mr. Mukherjee, that near universal electricity access has been achieved with all villages claimed to have been electrified. There may be few hamlets here and there left on this one, and almost all households have been provided with the connection. And by end of 2020, this one, it was not in 2019 actually. By end of 2020, this has been achieved. This one. Now, ensuring reliable and affordable electricity is an ongoing task, and this is being done by most of the states. It's a state's task, not the central government's task. And the central government is working with the states to achieve this milestone by 2022. If not by 2022, maybe by 2023, it should be achieved. Now, given this context, definitely we will ask to ourselves what is then the scope for DRE. This one, if we have already achieved village electrification, household electrification, electrification of public places, and all other stuff, then what is the scope for DRE? Now, I think it's extremely important that we have to go beyond the narrative of reliable supply to positively push DRE solutions. This is the first thing that we need to do, and there are stakeholders here who are pushing DRE solutions. I think everybody has to think about that. We should stop this narrative of unreliable power supply. We started with the narrative of not all villages are electrified. 5 years back, we used to discuss on that. The villages got electrified. Then we started the narrative of not all households are electrified. All households are now electrified. Tomorrow, the government will start, the discoms will start providing reliable power supply. What then you do? Don't you have a business model? One should ask oneself this question. Now, having said that, I certainly feel that DRE is most suitable not just for individual homes, given the new technologies that are evolving, and I'll come to that, but also for re-energizing livelihoods in the MSME sector, with clean energy for processing, with control on the control of the system is on the user. This one, so they know when to use it and how best to use it. This one. So this is extremely important. Why MSMEs? I am saying MSMEs are considered as the engines of growth, almost contributing 50% of India's total exports, employs more than 110 million people. But within the MSMEs, the first M is extremely important. The S and the last M is not that important. It's important, but they can themselves afford to have DRE or other solutions in their homes. So the micro enterprise, the home-based and cottage enterprise, which are almost 95% of the pie, of the MSME pie, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the finance, affordable credit, skills, competitiveness, and resulting in low income and low productivity. And because of that, they cannot afford to have a DRE systems on their own in their place. So what should we do? So there are agencies are required. This one is specialized agencies like my organization TERI is undertaking some task on that, are required, who can help these micro enterprises and home and cottage industries to assess the scope of DRE in their establishment, what type of solutions should be provided, what should be not just the technical model, but also the institutional model and the financial model. Now, I'll give an example. most of these enterprises are not registered. Now, if you're not registered, the scheduled bank will not give you loan, irrespective of whether the government has a scheme or has don't have a scheme. Now, what do you do then? This one. Now, if you go to the other financing agency in the rural market, we are just doing a study, and we found that the financing rate ranges from 14% to 18%. So that is not an affordable finance, or this one. Whereas the government finance might be around 7 to 8%, but for that you have to have a registration, you have to have the ITR, income tax return, you have to have the SME registration. All these things are required. These are the areas where I think, just without directly going into putting up DRE systems, I think we have to also see that these are the other associated things which needs to be addressed first, and they should be brought into a collective. We don't have a collective of or association or in the clusters who are empowered, who can take decisions, who are aware about the technologies. This one, so we are not working with them. So these are the areas that we need to start working with them, so that we can push the DRE systems in the different micro enterprise clusters. We did a study with support from Shakti Foundation last year, and this year we are doing with IKEA Foundation, where it's found that many of these clusters has huge potential for implementing DRE systems. Their load requirement is something like say from 50 watt to maybe 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt, and which are extremely this one with the DRE systems can be an extremely useful for at that range. You don't need because DREs are in kilowatt, and this requirement in these micro enterprises are also kilowatt. So it's a clearly matching the load with the demand. This one, both are matching, the supply and the demand are matching. So, but then you need to have built on the associated things that are extremely important. This is number one. Number two, for the now, what do you do to achieve that? So I give a 4D type of solution for specifically focusing on the micro enterprise sector. So before I do that, now in most of these enterprise and in the rural areas, they call what they say is that for them, whether it is DRE or the grid supply, it doesn't matter to them. Now it's what they call it equivalent electricity. That means we talk about reliability, but at the same time we don't talk about adequacy of electricity. So we have undertaken surveys in the village, and we found that both are equally important. So can you provide the adequate electricity that can meet your demand, and at the same time also provide reliable and affordable electricity? So all three are, I think, extremely important and equally important. Now, having said that, I propose a 4D type of solution, that what we are implementing at the field is that first you have to have discussion with these your stakeholders, whether it is micro enterprise or the cottage industries or the households. Then you have to develop the necessary techno-institutional models. Just alone technical model is not going to serve the purpose, because institutions are extremely important. And if we have to develop local institutions who can create the ecosystems in the villages or in the rural areas to provide the necessary sale and service and handholding support to these enterprises or the consumers, then you demonstrate the technology. Now we are finding it difficult because the funding agency is not providing us support for hardware. Now how do I demonstrate a technology? Now we have prospective consumers in the MSME sector or the micro enterprise sector, but I cannot demonstrate a technology which might cost me as a lakh or 2 lakhs. This one, no? So that I can convince the bank. The bank is ready to finance, but only after seeing the demonstration. The user is ready to take the technology, but only after seeing the demonstration. So how do I do that? So this is an area where I think we need to start working. This one, the funding agency also need to be cognizant of this requirement and start also fund demonstration. And then, of course, finally the dissemination of the solutions. And if you do this 4D, the fifth you will automatically come. That's the dividend. You will automatically get the dividend from these 4Ds. So I think this could be the roadmap for the household sector. I can visualize a solution at which I have written. Probably next week it will be published. This one, no, that I visualize a solution where in India we are going to, with advent of technology and what you call it, this one, Internet of Things and other. So you have microgrids. You have actually different models like peer-to-peer models, the consumer-based models, this one of the individual systems at the household. Mr. Mukherjee rightly mentioned about in villages, there are consumers who need to have 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt systems, maybe more than that. These have the solar packs in their house. These are all interconnected with the microgrid, the type of microgrid that Mr. Mukherjee is implementing under the SPI is implementing. And these are interconnected with them. With modern technology, you can actually, each one can speak with the other, this one. And these microgrids are then connected with the main grid, this one. So the main grid actually becoming from a distribution grid to a sub-transmission grid. This one, and with technology, you can actually, there can also be trading in the different partners. So I think whether it is 5 years or 10 years down the line, I don't know, but definitely this is something that the electricity market or the electricity system is going to see in future. Whether
Okay,
it is in
thank you,
India or in other places,
Mr.
definitely it is going
David.
to happen, and that would truly empower the consumers because they would then take a decision on how much electricity to use, for what purpose I should use it, and at what time I should use it, and accordingly the tariff would be designed. And that would be the day when we can really see tell that yes, we have provided universal electricity access, and consumers are taking the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you for looping in everything for